customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DeJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you're a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you.
Welcome, revolutionaries, to another episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast. I am John DeJulius, Chief Revolution Officer of the DeJulius Group. The DeJulius Group is changing the world by creating a customer and employee experience revolution. On February 28th and 29th, the DeJulius Group is offering a workshop that is open to the public titled Presentation Skills to Get Ahead in the Corporate World. Being a great leader entails being able to inspire and get everyone in your organization to rally around a common purpose and ignite their passion to execute your vision. Being a great presenter involves a combination of skills, techniques, and personal attributes. In this 2-day workshop in Cleveland, Ohio, you will learn the keys on how to nail your next presentation. Presenting ideas and sharing your message well is vital to career growth and corporate success. In this 2-day workshop, we will cover how to put together and deliver a great presentation, the 5 elements of a great presentation. Preparation, having more confidence in front of your audience, present clearer and more concise, creating engagement with your audience, storytelling, effective use of visual aids, passion and enthusiasm, good timing and pacing. Visit thedejuliusgroup.com/presentation skills today. Don't wait. The spots are limited for this presentation skills workshop. On today's episode, I talked to Mr. Matt Jensen, who is a highly successful business leader with a lifetime of experience in marketing, business development, entrepreneurship, and customer experience design. Matt helped build the Vance Thompson Vision to one of the top vision centers in the U.S. with 400 plus team members, 7 clinical and surgical sites. Today, Matt is the founder of Matt Jensen Marketing, a national columnist and an international speaker on customer experience design in business and healthcare. Before we get into the interview with Matt, let me ask you a question. If you didn't have a service or product to offer your customer, would your clients be willing to pay just to have a relationship with you because of the advice, education, connections, and resources you provide them? If the answer is no, then you are a commodity that can be outsourced to the lowest bidder. If the answer is yes, then you have made price irrelevant and become the brand customers can't live without. There's a business metaphor about a CEO under attack, right? Thinks the world is ending. The CEO has a foxhole to retreat into, but that CEO can only bring 2 to 3 vendors. His foxhole only has room for 2 to 3 of his business partners, vendors, people he does business with, in with him. That CEO must choose the 2 to 3 that they can't fathom life without, starting over tomorrow. That they don't care about the rest. They know that they can replace other vendors easily, probably cheaper. So when it comes to your clients, you need to ask yourself, would you be in your CEO's foxhole? Do you have such an amazing business relationship that they can't fathom doing business without you and your company? Becoming a trusted advisor means demonstrating that no one cares about your customer's business like you do. You earn business by being generous with your knowledge and resources without asking for anything in return. Your client will never share their problems with you until they trust you. So here is a few specific guidelines for becoming the client's business partner that they can't live without. Number one, love what you do and make it obvious. People can't fake passion. Passionate professionals are magnets, and customers love to buy from people who have an incredible amount of positive energy for what they do and who they do it with and for. Number two, get to know your customers not only professionally, but also personally. Know their Ford. Ford stands for family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. By making an emotional connection with them that eventually builds into an unbreakable relationship. Number three, be more committed to the success of your customer than anyone else they come in contact with. That means you refer to them, someone else at times, even if that means you lose the sale. Because that's what's most important is your customer success. You will get the sale. The lifetime sales will exceed anything you've ever thought. Number four, don't share how you can help them until you completely understand what their goals and pain points are. In any conversation, the client should be talking at least 80% of the time. Number five, make sure your client never meets anyone smarter than you at what you do. Read every book, relevant article on your subject. Your learning should never stop. Number six, be honest and transparent. You are the expert, and it is your responsibility to advise your client to do what's in their best interest, even when that may go against what they think they want. Number seven, go ugly early. Share bad news as soon as you can. Open with it. Let them know what you can't do and then immediately focus on what you can do. And number eight, be a resource broker. Make the right connections and introductions. We will be right back with our interview with Matt Jensen after this. My CX Trainer is a new product that the DeJulius Group has just launched. My CX Trainer was designed to help organizations onboard new and existing team members on delivering a world-class customer experience through online videos presented by the DeJulius Group consultants. Quickly get your team members to understand the impact that they have on the customer. Identify what your customers can always and never expect when doing business with you, and generate new ideas for today's environment. My CX Trainer helps you develop ways to personalize service for your customers, understand the difference between service and experience, and find ways to go above and beyond for your customers. Become a zero-risk business to do business with and overcome customer challenges. Visit thedejuliusgroup.com/my CX Trainer to learn more about adding My CX Trainer to your employee onboarding. Welcome back, revolutionaries. And today I am talking to Mr. Matt Jensen, a super successful business leader with a lifetime experience in marketing, business development, entrepreneurship, and customer experience design. Under Matt's leadership, Vance Thompson Vision, a client of the DeJulius Group, has added more than 400 team members, opened 7 clinical and surgical sites across the Mid and Mountain West, while creating more than a dozen profitable businesses running parallel to Vance Thompson Vision's work in the healthcare world. In this role, Matt developed a consistent methodology of scaling without skimping on culture and experience. And this is really, well, one of the many reasons I want to talk to Matt and have him as my guest. Today, Matt Jensen is the principal and founder of the Matt Jensen Marketing. And he's also a national columnist and international speaker on customer experience design in business and healthcare. Welcome, Matt.
Wow. John, thanks. That's quite a mouthful, and it's a nice compliment that you had some of those details. So thank you. Super fun. I got to tell you, early on, some of the things that we learned from you helped us shape a lot of the things you talked about there. I mean, you hit Dr. Thompson and I especially. Now there's a whole bunch of leaders and a whole bunch of doctors, but Vance and I in particular were inspired by some of your things from your very first book and then our very first conversations with you, because you were learning and you were vulnerable. And man, we picked up everything that you were talking about and said, well, what happens if we just shoot the moon? And it worked. It was crazy. Some of the concepts were so novel and so intoxicating that we just decided that's the way we want to practice and run our business forever. It turns out it's really attractive to the team. That's why it's how we grew.
And what's it been, Matt? Have we ever figured it out? 20 years? Going on 20 years? It's been close to 2 years.
Yeah. So I was, just up until this year, I was the CEO of Vance Thompson Vision for 19 and 3/4 years.
Oh, wow.
But you and I think,
because like a Jim Gilmore event. Yeah. And which is really cool. Part of your story that I want to share is you are such a professional development junkie, and you were obsessed with the customer experience long before most people, and long before, and still not, might still be, anyone in healthcare was. And so, you were a junkie. You were, attending some great leaders in industries, from Jim Gilmore and Joe Pine, authors of The Experience Economy. And that's where our paths originally crossed, I believe, because Jim brought me into one of his sessions.
Right.
But, you then, we became friends and worked together. We've spoken at the same conferences a few times, and you spoke at our first, what is known today as the Customer Service Revolution Conference, but it was Secret Service back in 2009, and you crushed it. You crushed it. So yeah, so that's where I want to start, because you are what we would call, we in most brand, I think conferences, we'd bring in the big name, Jim Gilmore, Shep Hyken, headliner, but we'd want to mix that in with brand executives who weren't speakers, authors running around the world telling people how to do it, but they were actually doing it and sitting at the point end of the spear of, how do I do this realistically with $12, $15 an hour frontline employees, all the demands, making cash flow. And so that's what you always brought, even though you were a great presenter. You were like, yeah, this can work. It's hard. Let me tell you where I stubbed my toe. But, let's go back to, what was it about the whole customer experience that made you a pioneer in your industry?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because first of all, it's a fun memory lane to talk about that Secret Service Summit. And man, that's a long time ago already. But, just being a tacticianer at the time, being on the front lines of having to convince, at the time, 50 other people that this is the way we wanted to formalize how we treat each other and how we treat our customers was really novel.
I want to bring out one thing for our attendees to understand. These weren't 50 necessarily employees below you.
Right. These
were doctors above you. Right.
Correct.
I mean, which is a totally different dynamic that most of us, or most middle level managers, they only have to try to sell it down. You had to sell it up to people. Right. Which is no easy feat. Yeah, I know always has Vance, bought in, but there was many doctors that you had to also get on board, which is not an easy task.
Just to kind of explain the person of Vance Thompson, that, the founder and principal of Vance Thompson Vision. I mean, this is an amazing human being, right? He is the kind of person you want as a friend or a neighbor or a brother. I mean, just an amazing human. I mean, he's a really good surgeon, a lot of innovations, a lot of clinical trials, internationally known, but he's an even better human being. Right.
Yeah. And I had him interviewed, as you know, on my podcast.
Right.
And it's funny, we're talking about him. We talked about you, but I'm pretty sure somewhere in the podcast, he had me in tears and emotional.
Yeah.
And that's just the way he is. He speaks from the heart, and he doesn't apologize for showing how much he cares about people.
Well, when we're a small company, John, what we found is that proximity is a great way to build culture, is just to be around each other. But if you want to scale, you can't scale temperament. You can't take the unique qualities of somebody like Vance that are so amazing, and then add on a couple hundred people and have it be the same. And you certainly can't get that much exposure to him. There's people, from 3 states away who've never even met him.
Right.
So how are you going to build an organization around an ethos that is a character like that? And, it's also in line with values and belief set, but how are you going to create an ethos about it? That's where content like yours and Jim and Joe, Jim Gilmore, Joe Pine, started to give us a construct that it's a school of thought. Being good, loving one another, serving each other, and especially surprising and delighting people we care for is not only the right thing to do, it's a great way for Vance to be a good person, but it's really good business as well. Yeah. And we found that with the models that you have and others that we studied hard, we could scale it. It could go beyond just one, the heroic individual efforts of Vance, and it could be company-wide.
And what I always like to say, you remove the hardest obstacle, and I call it employee roulette. Right. And, this happens if Vance is on property, everyone's going to be on their best. Or if I get Matt, I'm going to get that type of experience. But if Vance is on a different location or on vacation and I don't get Matt, good luck. And with every business struggles, I don't care who you are, Apple and Nordstrom, to a certain degree from employee roulette, it's how much. And that's what you're talking about, is replicating. Vance replicated himself in you, and then you became, the next tier of making sure everyone was buying into this. And then you did that with your leadership team, which was just amazing.
This whole podcast could just be about the awesome qualities of Vance Thompson. But, the thing that I think is also really smart about what he did is he recognized that if he was going to be successful, he had to be in the operating room. I mean, that's the only economic model. And literally everybody else is overhead because he's the only one that does anything that's billable. And so how is he going to be the person who's going to beat the drum on customer experience
when he's in the back,
when he's not, when he's in the coal room, so to speak? And so that's where it's pretty novel that he hired some kid who's in an ad agency, right, to run this. Because basically, my job.
You were from a big city. I mean, you had that big city experience. Tell people where you grew up.
I grew up in Pierre, South Dakota, and now live in Sioux Falls. It's the largest city in South Dakota. And, South Dakota boasts 780,000 people.
Yeah.
We're the kind of state where you get to be disappointed when the governor doesn't remember your name.
Right. What kind of customer service is that?
Yeah, right. But so then, he was smart that he invested in that early, somebody to be the ambassador when he couldn't be the ambassador, and we were hand in glove. And, I talk a lot about him, but what he also did then is he only wanted doctor partners who had a similar belief set, that we're going to get the team, we're going to nod, we're going to give the team approval. We're going to tell them that we have this high expectation of how they treat each other and treat our guests. And then we're going to go back to the operating room. We're going to let them run. We're going to let them do what they got into healthcare for in the first place, which is to help people. And we're going to remove all the other barriers. I mean, I think, John, we could talk about this forever too, but the most important thing management can do is remove barriers from the front lines.
Yeah.
Front lines are the people who want to do the right thing.
Right.
But
it's
bureaucracy,
no fun getting beat up in a customer facing role today. And you're just the messenger, but my bosses say we can't do that.
It's a policy.
Your coupon expired, whatever it is. And now I'm getting beat up 5-6 times a day. I'm not going home saying, man, I love my job. I can't wait to go back there tomorrow. And if you've noted and figured it out, it doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to force them to be hiding behind policy all day.
Not only that, I believe it's more profitable to do it the other way, where if you endeavor to make each team member believe that their sole responsibility is to delight that customer or vendor or team member in front of them, then you're not going around policing. You're going around encouraging, and it kind of starts to self-manage. It gets easier the bigger you get, not harder.
Right. And you bring up something good that I talk about in like onboarding experience and new employee orientation. You know what new employee orientation is for most companies? It's how you don't get fired. All right, new, young, 19-year-old Matt Jensen. If you're, late 3 days or more, you're gonna be written up, and then this. If you're caught, this, and it's all about how not to get fired. How inspiring is that? Versus, we spend a lot of our time talking about going above and beyond, and this and this, and someone raised their hand and says, "We're allowed to do that?" They say, yeah. And they say, I would have gotten fired for doing that at my last job. And we say, you'll get fired at this job if you don't do it. No, you do that. And it's a different, it's a whole different meaning and purpose to someone versus, being educated on what you can't do to not get in trouble. So, Matt, before we get into, what you're doing now, can you give us some quick, because you did so many, Matt, I'd go out and you'd bring me in to speak to your company and different events and we'd, into your team. And I'd always be blown away of how you took my idea and made it so much more in your world. And I was like, yeah, that's what I meant. And it really wasn't, but you would give me credit, which I didn't deserve. But I'd love for our audience to say, how do you take a somewhat sterile, vanilla patient experience that, almost get anywhere you go and make it what you made it at Vance Thompson?
Well, so I'll give you two examples. The first is, I think, the most groundbreaking. The other has kind of become more routine. But the first is one of the first things we tell new team members, and I still say we after being there for 20 years. I'm going to say that till the day I die because I'm proud of them.
Yeah.
The first things we tell our new team members is you can spend up to $100 at any point in time to blow the mind of a colleague, a customer, or a vendor. And they're like, what do you mean? And what we mean is, if you know that it's your office mates, their favorite drink is pumpkin spice latte, and it's that season, and you come in with one, you just give your manager the receipt and we'll have you reimbursed in the next payroll. We want the right thing to do, the fun thing to do, to be so immediate that there's no inertia.
You're priming their mind to see what, normally people say, oh, it's my birthday, it's my anniversary. Oh, I forgot to get my wife an anniversary card. And you're like, oh, that sucks. But when you're inspiring them, now all of a sudden I'm hearing, hey, run to Hallmark or whatever and get, 24 Mother's Day cards or anniversary cards and let Matt pick. Now, and also because the way you did it is you constantly celebrated those stories. So that's where
we lift them up. We lift them up in our daily.
Right.
Last night I had dinner with a friend of mine from Fargo, North Dakota, 4 hours from here. And unbeknownst,
that's a real place, right? That's just not a movie, right? Okay.
Nope, it's a wonderful place. 4 hours away, Sioux Falls and Fargo are like the twin cities of nowhere.
Yeah.
But I joke, but these are very cool towns. His mom just had surgery at the office in Fargo. And he told me this last night. Now, I haven't worked in Vance Thompson Vision for 11 and a half months. And he said, hey, I just wanted to start the conversation by telling you my mom says hi. And I don't know his mom.
Uh-huh.
I said, what do you mean? He said, she told me to tell you that she appreciates the flowers. And I was like, okay, you're going to have to give me more.
Right.
So she had a big procedure. And for her last visit to the clinic, she happened to mention on her way out that her next appointment's on her anniversary. Wow. She walks in the exam room and there's more flowers from our team than she got from his dad that day. Right. And she's just like, she kept asking, so how did you do this? How'd you know to do this? Who said it was okay for you to do this? And then he drives down to have dinner with me. And I get this compliment for what my team did. But talk about, just what freedom. First of all,
Matt, you teach it so well, but you live it. And, I don't know when it was a few years ago. And listen, I like to think we're friends, but for the audience, we may, if we're lucky, catch up once a year, which isn't enough, right? But when we do, it's great. But we've never spent any significant time together outside of, me coming in to speak at your event or us speaking at an event together and sharing the stage. So I just want to preface that because this is not something I got from anyone, but a couple of years ago, you just out of the blue, you're like, John, I think I have this right. I have this written down. This was the day that you met your wife, which was July 22nd, 1989. This wasn't like, And you just blew my mind. And this was like 3-4 years ago. So it was 30 some years later. You said, I told you on a car ride one time, and it just blew my mind. And again, that brought tears to my eyes. And you always are so impactful that you'll reach out with a reason, not that you need one, but it'll be the best message I get, and it'll put a bounce in my step. And you're just so good at that. You're not just telling people to do that. And I think that's why so many people that worked for you do it, because it's the way you took care of them.
You first of all, it's humbling to hear you tell a story, because part of the reason we do that is because it feels good to encourage other people, right? I do it for you because I care for you. But here's the secret. I like myself better when I do it.
Yeah.
I like me. It feels good for me. And
it's called the day maker dopamine, right?
Yeah, right.
And the day maker actually feels the best at the end of the day, even though you certainly made me feel good. So, that's what you get. It's the helper's high. And the biggest thing I think leaders miss that you've gotten personally from it, but also professionally from it, is when you put employees, and again, we talked about hiding behind policy and don't punish 98% of the customers for what you're afraid 2% are going to do. You live this. And when you made all your employees have the permission to go buy her flowers or make their day or remember this, they're going home at the end of the night feeling really good because they had the day maker dopamine kicking for them. And,
exactly.
Then honey, they go home and tell honey, husband, wife, and she's like, I couldn't do that, at work. And that makes them even feel better. And that's why you had such low turnover. That's why you had such incredible growth. I mean, you lived it first, embodied it, and then people followed.
Right. Well, I want to share another example with you, John, because I think that's the $100 example is a fun one. But I mean, by the way, nobody really spends $100. People usually spend 10.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you empower them with an ownership mentality and they treat it like an owner.
Right.
And so, but the other example is just the check-in process. And I stole this. I grew up at TGI Fridays, right? I love to sell you some super nachos or whatever the restaurants sell. But the layout of our welcome area, our atrium, because we never call it a waiting room. Okay, that's important. Right. But we've got a seating chart, just like a restaurant would have at their hostess stand. And you check in and you say, I'm here for my 10 o'clock appointment. And they the team up front, the host, so they'll watch you go and sit down.
And listen, I want to make sure everyone understands, because the language you're using is so important. He's not talking about TGI Fridays. He's talking about Vance Thompson Vision. And he's not saying the receptionist. You got to hear what Matt's not saying. He's not saying the waiting room, right? Because those are negative and old paradigm. He's saying the host. And what do we call it? Atrium, or experience area or whatever, which I've been there, and you don't know you're in a doctor's office waiting room. So So go ahead. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure.
So then, the host at the front is watching to see where you went and sat, John. What you take from the bistro. There's soft drinks and all kinds of special coffees and fresh fruit. They watch what you take, and then you go and sit in different pods around the atrium, and they'll note where you're sitting and what you're wearing. They'll also note somewhere, and we stole this from you using the acronym FORD, Family, Occupation, Recreation, Dreams. We have a place to put what they took from the bistro. So if they took a Diet Coke, their next appointment, there might be a Diet Coke waiting for them.
Right. Love that.
We already know that. And we didn't have to ask them. We just know.
Right.
So they'll send a message to the people in the back, the technicians who are going to work up that patient customer.
Yep.
And rather than that technician coming to the hallway and into the whole atrium barking the name. Yeah.
Matt, and you're looking around. And meanwhile, we might have met Matt before. This might be his post-op. It might be, better than me. And I'm supposed to have a relationship with Matt. So you cheat.
There's this visceral, negative response we have when we hear our own name yelled in a situation, especially in healthcare, where it's supposed to be private and intimate.
Right.
So we go right up to John because we know that he's wearing a killer black shirt, right? And he's seated in the center section, seat number 4.
Right.
And then there's 4 rules on how we greet, right? We come down to eye level. John's on a seat. We come down to eye level. We touch him on the shoulder. We say his preferred name and we give him our preferred name. Hi, John. I'm Matt. We're ready for you in the back. Follow me. And it's, it's really.
I love this guy. We could do a clinic. One other thing, I believe you took my white cape, and maybe it's kind of part of it. Talk about how you did the white cape in the medical industry.
Yeah. So, and this was, one of the first things we did. And it's been a long time since we've been able to do it just this way because we've grown so much. But all of our new patients for laser vision correction, for example, we scheduled to be on Monday and Tuesday mornings. So every patient on Monday and Tuesday morning, they were all new. And so we could freely say, hey, welcome to Vance Thompson Vision. Like, we knew our script because we knew that none of them were repeat patients. And then all of our repeat patients were scattered throughout the other parts of the week.
How cool.
Right. So we just did it by scheduling, no colored capes or anything.
Okay. And then one other thing I remember, and tell me if this is accurate, that you made sure there was a different place for people having LASIK that day to sit in a private place. And so I've had LASIK, so let me give the layman's term. Yeah. It's this, especially 20 years ago or 30 years ago when it was really Greek. Now it people would say, are you crazy? My cousin went blind from that, or, all these I heard, and, all these folk stories. So I believe that's why you seated them in a private section. So they weren't hearing, people saying, oh my God, people have gone blind left and right in these things. I've seen it on those.
On your new patient day, you come in and you're in the regular atrium with everybody else because you might have questions or you'll overhear questions. But on the day of your surgery, we whisk you away to a different room where it's super chill.
Yeah.
Okay. We're talking spa. You hear water fall in the background. It smells of lavender and it's darker. So it's just going to calm you. And we don't want anybody asking questions in that room, right? No tension and no stress. So those were fun ways that we use.
Yeah.
Some of your teaching.
You guys just thought about this so every detail. Like you said, you think you're walking into a Starbucks or a cafe. You don't feel like you're walking into a doctor's office, and you greet like you're from a 5-star restaurant or hotel, not like stand 10 feet away and let me shuffle all this paper before I acknowledge that you're in front of me.
It's fun, John. You remember so much about some of the things we shared with you. It's fun for me to just be reminded of them.
Yeah.
It's fun to be proud of it, but I hadn't thought about some of those things for a while. So
I do that too, because the white cape, I just shared it the other day at a conference. And I haven't talked about it in probably 10, 15 years. Like it's to me, we did that 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when we first opened this lot, and we still do it. But I either think you probably heard the story or it's not that impressive anymore. And it applied to the story I was telling. I quickly said, if you walked in a John Roberts salon, you see 8 people getting a haircut, 6 will be in a black John Roberts haircut and cape, 2 will be in a white. And what's that mean to us? Anyone in white has never been here before, and that allows you to. And just people were like, couldn't write down fast enough. And we forget that those back in the day when we had no money, right? Yeah. And we couldn't build the chandelier or the, walls like, our competition was at that time. Those little things that made us different are still what, has the biggest return on investment. And the chandelier is great, but it's the human.
It's the human part. The best operational excellence is the best marketing.
Right.
I mean, just to have the things that are mundane.
Be brilliant at the basics.
Yep. Yeah.
Right. Get it right. So what's cool now, we've talked about the past, but you were part of the Great Resignation.
I was.
Yeah. So let's jump to what you're doing now.
Well, so December 31st of 2022, after 20 years, I with my family just decided we've been doing this. We've been running hard. We've been doing it long enough. And there's a bigger, longer story there that I hope we have a chance to get into. But I made a difficult decision during halftime, about 20 years in.
You weren't a 26-year-old millennial that said, screw this, I'm not, getting promoted fast enough. You had a great job, great career for a company you couldn't love more, right? So outside, it's like, what are you doing here?
Right. Right.
And again, you're not 26 with no bills or thing. You have a wife and three teenage. How they're
18, yep. 18,
yeah.
16, 14.
So you took a huge gamble to follow something that was in your ear. So tell us why and how this all come together.
Well, I'll give you the lead up, and then I'll kind of talk through the decision. So we're growing quickly, and within the little space that is
Vance Thompson or
Vance Thompson
marketing?
Vision. Vance Thompson Vision is growing quickly.
Okay.
Earlier on, so 15 years ago, Vance challenged me because I was being recruited by other companies to leave him and go join them and run their business. He said, "Listen, man, you got to find something to do on the side where you can run free, or I'm going to lose you someday. So stay and start something," which took a lot of guts for him. And I'm really grateful that he did that. So I started Matt Jensen Marketing at that time. It's 15 years old, 16, I guess. And that'll be important here later on in the story. But already, I just want to talk about the insight that he and the other doctors had in allowing their CEO to have a parallel business, right? I mean, it takes a lot of guts. And because of that, I think he knew my temperament enough to know that it wouldn't actually backfire on him. It would keep me loyal to him.
Right.
And so as I grew that firm and went all over the world to do that work, I'd come back with ideas on how to improve his business too, or maybe most. Well, 6 years ago or so, we started to grow outside of Sioux Falls. Vance Thompson Vision started to grow into Fargo and into Bozeman, into Billings, Montana. And we did that because we started training surgeons to do what we do best. We started a fellowship program, and halfway through their year of the most amazing surgical technology, and the best team culture ever, they'd say, "Hey, I don't want to go off on my own next year. I want to do it like this, but I want to go back to my home state or the place I always wanted to live, or where and next thing you know, our fellows are saying, "Let's go to North Dakota and do this again." And so it wasn't some big strategic plan. It was, based around really our love for each other. We're like, we don't want to say goodbye either. Let's do it. And we really put us to the test as to whether or not we could scale what I talked about earlier, this culture, this temperament of doing good by your neighbor. And it turns out that we could bottle it, and it would be just as good as long as we could teach the standards and test the standards. Well, that quickly grew to 7 sites in just a couple of years. And in there is COVID, and, we're trying to keep the company together, and we didn't furlough people. And, our doctors and our leaders all went without for a while we're just trying to get through that time. And I remember one of our doctors, Dr. Birdall, who's a very close friend of mine as well. I mean, I feel like they're all my best friends, said to me, "This is the Super Bowl of leadership right now. And this is right in the heart of COVID. We've got gifted people on our team who were looking at the initial drafts from Congress on how the PPP dollars would come through. And, so we feel like we're more ready than anybody, and we're engaged. We're meeting every day virtually on how we're going to weather the storm." And for the first 30 days of that, I felt pretty bad, thinking, okay, as a leader, how can we be in this spot? How come I wasn't prepared for this kind of disaster? And then it really lifted quickly, because I thought nobody in the world was prepared. You looked across the landscape and you just saw how common the struggle was.
Right.
And it's a strange way, it was really encouraging. But then fast forward a year, and we're out of COVID, and we've held it together, and we're proud, but we're still running at that pace of during COVID. And it occurred to me that COVID wasn't the Super Bowl of leadership. A year after was. Right. When you still have all of the kind of post-traumatic parts of COVID, all the expectations of high growth, but yet this feeling like you just ran a marathon, right? So you're already fatigued.
Right.
And I find myself going to all these sites and building new markets and being away from my girls, all 4 of them, my wife and my 3 girls. And our family was going through some tough things, mental health wise. And I found myself just...
You had your own professional awakening?
Well, what I started, John, I really just started to notice that I was souring, it became rote. It became windshield time, and just counting the hours before I could just get home and just rest. And I know now that I was suffering from anxiety.
I'm assuming that you were bringing that home too. It wasn't like you were turning a switch
course.
off when you got home.
No,
It's hard to, separate.
well, and I think especially I was showing it home.
Right.
Because I can put on, we can all perform well. I always tell people, even I can perform well for a full business day.
Right.
But you go home and you're not wearing a mask anymore. And
right.
I'm certainly not the man I want to be. And I don't want to be like overly dramatic or anything like that. Everybody's got their own version of crisis. And a lot
but
of
your crisis is yours.
This one was mine. And I just started to really feel like I'm just not loving this anymore. And meanwhile, we're still, world-class organization, winning awards, opening new markets. And this contrast of people counting on feeling like I've lost that love and feeling. And my doctors did something, frankly, it's just otherworldly. And Dr. Birdall and Dr. Thompson, Vance and John came to me and said, hey, we can do something for you as our CEO that we can't do for each other as partners. And we can do it because you're not a surgeon. But you need to rest. We see this taking a chunk out of your hide.
Wow.
And so we want to give you a sabbatical. He said, I was like, wow. And then they said, we want it to be 6 months.
Holy cow.
And I said, wow. And they said, we were thinking 3, but we thought it'll take you a month to decompress.
Right.
Maybe a month of balance and then a month of anxiety coming back into it.
Yeah.
And so they just said, we want you to take a full 6 months, full pay, full bonus, full everything, and just enjoy it. Now, I'm so self-conscious at the time and so wrapped around the axle, anxiety-wise, John, that what do you think my first question was?
Who's going to handle what you do? I don't know.
It was worse. It was all about, it's like somebody tells you, hey, I love you. And my answer was, but do you love me?
Right.
So they said, hey, we want to give you the sabbatical, all the bells and whistles. And I said, do you want me back? Like, I couldn't do it.
Right.
I just said to them, there's cheaper ways to fire me. If that's what
Right.
So like, no, I don't think you're hearing us. We want you, the seat's yours. We can see it all over you that you need the rest. But I'm telling you, I could feel the physical constraint. Like I felt something being lifted off my shoulders.
Wow.
And we just had a beautiful moment where I just recognized, man, I do need a break. It was a gift where, frankly, man, I mean, I'm eternally grateful for what I found in that time and for what they afforded me. First week was just going off to a place where there's no digital, there's no phones,
unplugged.
No anything.
You went unplugged.
Yep. And the rest of the time was just being around. It wasn't any trips. It was just making it to stuff. It's just being around the house, trying to figure out how do I invest in myself in my own home, right? Because I always was bragging about, I don't have any hobbies. I love business, and I do, and I do, but it was maybe tied too close to my identity.
Yeah.
So during about halfway through the sabbatical, my wife and I look at each other, and I'm not even doing anything for the marketing firm, really, because I don't want to just replace work with work during that time.
Right.
And she looks at me and she says, man, I just love our life right now. And John, you've met her. I mean, this is the woman of my dreams still.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just knew right then and there, I'm going to rework this.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this different now. Halfway through, we're just going to trust that we can make it happen to create a life like this where we've got flexibility. We'll reduce a little stress. I'm going to run hard, but not as hard.
Yeah.
And on October 11th, I went to Vance's home and I told my buddy, listen, man, this has been an amazing gift and I've got a couple months left, but I don't think I'm coming back. And that was really hard. It was really tough.
He had to know, he didn't necessarily know that would happen, but he had to know it could have. I mean, he's smart and he knows you were a shell of Matt Jensen. And listen, I take you at 60%, but you can tell when someone isn't, themselves, and you got to run that risk if you really care. A lot of people talk about, and I suggested, hey, at new employee orientation, talk about your rags to riches story, right? Matt Jensen, he started off, as a host, right? 15, 20. Today, he's the CEO of Vance Thompson Vision, right? I have those with my employees, and it shows the person that's just starting. But I also say the other story you need to make viral is the employee that you said, what do you want to, where do you want to be 5 years from now? And they trusted you and they said, a totally different industry, and say, okay, let's make that happen.
Right.
And that's the story you can't be afraid of telling and happy, because those stories, they're going to work like you do, their tail off the 2 or 3 years they are here. But man, they're going to be a referral source for clients, patients, and future employees because of the story you're telling me that Vance and his partners did for you, which was, most people would say, are you nuts? You don't give them that opportunity. You're going to lose them. And that wasn't what they cared about.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, John, because even now, not being formally part of the team, my marketing company is still doing all their work. I'm hanging out with one of them almost every week. So we're still incredibly relevant in each other's lives. I just went and spoke at the Omaha Christmas party last week, right? Which, they're thrilled with and says fills their tank, but it fills my tank.
Yeah.
Right? It feels good. Yeah. And so I love these guys. I love this team. And I just needed to redefine what my role was a little bit, because I was just taking it too seriously.
Yeah. And I know this has really had obviously a profound impact. I mean, midlife crisis, so to speak, if you will. And those are real. Those are real. What do you have for people out there that sometimes people are forced because they get laid off, at 40 or 50 or even 60. And a lot of times it's the best thing ever happened to them because they wouldn't have jumped on their own. You didn't have that, from an outside, it looked like, dude, what are you doing? I mean, you have everything you could possibly have and you're throwing that away. So what's your post midlife perspective on, and you might not be totally through it, but for others that may be struggling with, I worked my ass off, I climbed up this ladder and I don't like where it took me.
Right. So there's a couple things here, John, that I think are really important. The epiphany, if you can say that I had, is that I was really good at work. I wasn't good at rest. And I think that's a really important thing. You've got an incredible book coming out talking about the employee experience. And we really reward people when they're ultra responsive and they're on the stick when it comes to, a text at night or an email at night. I feel like that's who I was. Right? But we also have to remember that, especially if there's a power differential, leader to subordinate, that we feel like we have to respond to the people above us, no matter what the time is.
Yeah.
So if we want to, as leaders, we have to be very careful about what expectations we create of the people below us, because they just want to please us.
Right.
Back to that middle management comment, right? We got to remove barriers. So, what we're working for in my family is we really try to take Sundays and just recharge. We just really try to unplug and recharge and just have it be about rest and eating and just being a family. And that sounds so old school, but it is so life-giving.
Yeah.
And so I don't think everybody needs a sabbatical necessarily. And I'm certainly not an advocate of everybody quitting their job.
But, you're kind of taking a sabbatical once a week.
That's right.
On Sundays, right?
Well, sabbatical and Sabbath have the same root.
Right.
This idea of rest, and especially in a world right now where I say it like this: we don't even eat when we eat. We eat, but we also check our phones, or we also
Well, how bought in is your 3 daughters who, if they're typical like most, that phone is glued to their hand, and you asking them to not even bring it to the table, let alone the day. That's a crisis. That you could be, child services could be called on you for that.
Right. So it takes a bunch to get through that. You have to model it, right? One of the things I learned from you is Secret Service at home, right? So I take my girls on what I call great dad ventures. So sometimes that's a trip over a weekend. Sometimes it's just dinner. And, phones get stacked in the middle of the table. And we're just trying to figure out how to talk to one another. Yeah. Well, some of my favorite things to do are car rides where we're shoulder to shoulder, or skiing when you're shoulder to shoulder on a chairlift, right? Yeah. Things where we're talking, but there's not necessarily eye contact because they feel like they can share a little bit more.
Yeah.
But for teenagers, that was another driving force. It's like, listen, these girls, I got 3 summers left before we're empty nesters. I don't want to wait till I'm retired to invest all the time that I wanted to invest
Right.
with them. And I needed to remove some barriers there. But yeah, I mean, it's tricky. You have to stage it like anything else.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And so, I know it's listen, the one thing that got us together was our common passion, obsession for the customer experience and day making and all that. We clicked on that. But I don't care how many times we talk, it starts off business, it drives to about being a father and a spouse. And I've learned so much from you in that regard. And I always love where, what I take away. And listen, it's not every time, we have a conversation, it's roses and balloons. It's,
Right.
you've been honest with me and I think I've been honest with you that, some of the toughest times, and to me is how you're handling it, versus God, would I handle it that well? So I know this is so, so important to you, depression, teenage depression, young men, all these things. What do you think? I don't know if there's a solution or what leaders or as parents we have to do better. So let me ask you, let me put it in a more specific way. I am fortunate that I just never knowingly have been depressed in my life, right? And things bad can happen to me, and I just have a really good way of spinning it and say, but there's an opportunity there, right? There's an opportunity that I lost a client. There's an opportunity. The opportunity is to learn why, what we could have done to avoid it, and now hopefully that will dramatically reduce in the future. Whatever that is, I'm really good at that, but because I don't have those highs and lows or lows, I'm sometimes or a lot of times not as empathetic as someone that does. And, if you're a buddy of mine, I'm like, oh, Matt, come on, pull up your socks. I mean, really? You're complaining about this, and this. You got a beautiful wife, 3 amazing daughters, a great career. Get some perspective, Matt. And do you need me to tell you, what's going on, overseas and here and here and here? And I have that, which is the worst friend, whatever you could have in that. So, long question here, but I don't see it in people.
Yeah.
I wish I did. Right. So I could say, hey, Matt, do what Dr. Vance did for you or whatever that looks like in our world. I might not see it in my sons because, I didn't have those signals in me. So I wouldn't see the common area. And then, and how to help. Besides, obviously, I believe the worst is, tough enough kid. Quit feeling sorry for yourself. And I hate the victim mentality. Those are all my knee-jerk reactions that today, hopefully I bite my tongue. No, today they are not right, but it's still my, muscle memory, knee-jerk reaction that I'm dying to say. And so I don't know, can you give someone like me advice?
Yeah. So, I mean, John, this is going to teeter on, values and faith. And for me, it has to. But I mean, I think that one key component of leadership is your ability to be vulnerable. Right. If you look across the landscape of leaders today, the Elon Musks, the political situation, nobody admits when they're wrong or when they're hurting. And similarly, for high performers, we go out and we wake up, hair on fire. And we know we're going to kick ass because that's all we do. Right. That's what we do when we get up. Right. And the whole GSD, get it done kind of mentality, that's kind of what I live by. I guess I got to the point where I was just...
You had to be doing that at home, right?
Because, but I also just I was so tired of it. I was just trying to satisfy myself. And I felt like there was what else is there? And, it comes back to my faith a little bit in that work is good. I mean, work is something that I believe in. I think it's worship. I believe that I have my favorite deity in my life is a deity that worked, put hands in dirt, was creative, created me, and did that hard for 6 days. And yet able to accomplish anything and still rested. So what makes me think so highly of myself that I don't need to do that? I can just work all 7, thump my chest, get it done, wake up and kick ass again tomorrow. That dissonance is where I was, right? That just kind of I can muscle it. And you can until you're fatigued.
Right.
And that's, I think, the advice I have for people who are listening to this podcast is, in quiet, are you willing to have quiet moments with yourself? Are you willing to think deeply about your existence and why you feel like you're placed here? What's your responsibility to yourself, to your family, to your team? And are you allowing yourself any time to get that done? I'll relate this back to you. We came and heard you. We went to your center in Cleveland, where you do all your calls and everything like that. When Vance and I got back home, we made sure we had a day open. We didn't just get back to our schedule. We made sure we had a day open so we could plan the work that came out of that visit. Right? Because if you just go back to work,
it's notebooks you find in the trunk 6 months later.
Yeah. Remember when we committed to that one time? We do that in business, and we're like, that's good. That's good business. You got to create gaps so you can grow. But we don't do that for our own personhood. And that's, I think, what I'm learning is you got to be your best, to be your sharpest. You got to find an opportunity for mindfulness. I was just telling another group last night, this is after my dinner, man, I love where I am right now. I feel like I'm going from whatever meeting I'm doing, I go where my energy takes me, and I'm sharp because I've got space to think things through. I'm not hustling. I'm just in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's just been a really rewarding time having had that epiphany about how I spend my time and why I spend it.
And so, you've talked about, that you've had some family members, I believe, struggle with depression. And I know the pandemic was a great accelerator of that. Any advice of either A, how you found out, other than your wife just, like so many times, you're clueless. Have you not known that she hasn't gotten off the couch or out of her bedroom in 3 months? Is there anything that you do now, or you tell someone to do? Like you talk about those car rides, right?
Yeah.
And asking what seems to be innocent questions, but kind of hopefully is making the door open a little bit, that they'll let something into, that eventually turns into, she's telling you that, there's a red flag here in her life, whether it's your daughter or your significant other. Any advice on that?
So what I've done during this time, John, is I've allowed myself to have a few men, 7 guys and me. We have a group and we meet regularly and we get deep fast. Yeah. And we talk about the stuff that most guys don't talk about. How are you spending your time? Tell me about your thought life. What are you feeding your brain with, your mind with? How are you spending your money? That's something we don't talk about, right? When was the last time you took your wife on a date? Like how's your youngest teenage daughter doing? Right. These guys have permission to just drill me and go under the hood. And I got to tell you, in more ways than one, these guys they just saved my life. They keep me going because they're encouraging me, but they're also asking me hard questions, and I can't hide from them. Yeah. They're business owners, business leaders, so I respect them. So by way of just our craft, they're people I also want to spend time with because I can learn a lot from them. They're good people, and I do that for them too. Yeah. So, I guess, people listening out there, if you have a couple of people who you can just confide in, maybe not your spouse. Not that you shouldn't have your spouse. Right. Sometimes your spouse can't get to, gut level fears and things like that, especially as men. We're supposed to be the providers. Right. We feel like sometimes, and, maybe we can't confide in our spouse that I'm not sure I have what it takes to actually be the provider. Who do I share that with? Right. And, yeah. And we all have doubt, but, I'm like that, we don't need to be expressing it to everyone. Right. But we do have to definitely show vulnerability, which is hard hopefully it's not as hard for the younger generations, but I know it's hard for your generation and mine. That just wasn't something you do. You don't show vulnerability. Yeah, that's right. But that's a challenge, I think, for people. Do you have people in your life that are willing to have hard conversations with you, who you respect? Non-judgmental. Right. Not frenemies. That's, those people are always interested in giving you feedback. Right. I'm talking about people who, out of love and out of caring, are being like, man, you might be coming off differently than you hope. Yeah. No, I love that. So let's
talk about your marketing company. It says Matt Jensen Marketing.
Yeah.
Work with, and what do you do for them?
Half of our work is still in the healthcare space.
Okay.
Whether it's practices in ophthalmology. Ophthalmology is really the majority of that healthcare work, but we do a lot in aesthetics, spas and things like that as well. And some of that's practice work where we help them with the tips and tricks that we just shared on this podcast. But others are in the industry themselves, right? The laser companies, the lens companies, training their staff on how to go into practices, right? To be consultants on these things, maybe their own marketing or branding standards, scripting guides, how to say things, how to implement.
Sounds like so much more than a marketing company.
Yeah. I mean, marketing is such a tough word, right? And I do believe that the best, like I said before, the best marketing is operations. And that comes through that offering. The other half of our work, John, is evenly split between Main Street business, retail and otherwise. I feel like that has to be a part of any business because you can't be sharp in the boardroom unless you're sharp on the street.
Yeah.
And, I like the lemonade stand mentality that, you got to take your family out to dinner with whatever you made on the street that day in your lemonade stand. And until you've done that, you're not a real marketer.
Yeah.
And then the last is, it's kind of fulfills my Robin Hood complex, which is we do work for nonprofits, especially ministry-based nonprofits for low fee or no fee.
Wow.
That really fills our cup. So,
Matt, you are incredible. I always know you have been. And every time I speak to you, I have a bounce in my step. And I appreciate you as a human being first, and all the things that has helped people as a leader, as an entrepreneur. I just really appreciate learning from you.
It's nice for you to say that, John. I want to leave you with this, and I think it's for all leaders out there. And that's, I learned from you because I hung on every word you said, right? For you give talks all over the place, and I believe them. And I hung on every word. And that's both an encouragement to you, but also an indictment for us as leaders. Like, what happens if everybody around you is hanging on every word? What are they taking from that? And
that's a sobering thought.
Right. Sobering, hopefully encouraging. Hopefully it encourages you, man, because you're the man, right? I mean, we've done so much because we hung on every word, but it also feels like I want to make sure I carry that burden properly too, because I want to do good.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt.
Thanks, buddy.
Revolutionaries, we will be back after this. Let's wrap up this episode with my mantra of living an extraordinary life so countless others do. At our past Customer Service Revolution conference, our theme was Ubuntu. U-B-U-N-T-U. Ubuntu is an African word that means I am because we are. I love this word, and I love its meaning. With the epidemic of loneliness and isolation our world is currently going through, now more than ever, we need to create stronger communities personally and professionally. People, customers, employees need communities now more than ever. As leaders, we need to build experiential communities for our customers, employees, that they feel a common bond, a connection with one another. We need to start giving credit to others. It takes a village. It takes a team to build an incredible organization and to create a revolution. Ubuntu. I am because we are. Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast.